God's got a word for you, and I pray that you would have an open heart as we look into it. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in because I want you to have time for D groups. Luke 16, we're going to read the first 13 verses of Luke 16. Now, when people think of Luke 16, they think about, I don't know, maybe some of you, does anything, when you think of Luke 16, does anything come to your mind, a certain story in the Bible? Most of the time when people hear Luke 16, they think of the rich man and Lazarus. That's in Luke 16 later on, but we're not really going to get into that. We're going to look at verse 13, and this is going to launch our new series. And then specifically, this is where we're going to take our text out of tonight. And so let's start reading. Verse 1, and he said, being Jesus, he's talking unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward. Everybody say steward. And the same was accused unto him that he had wasted. Everybody say wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account for thy stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. He's saying, what am I going to do if I'm no longer the steward to my master? I cannot dig, and to beg I am ashamed. I am resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his Lord's debtors unto him, and said unto the first, how much owest thou unto my Lord? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said unto him, take thy bill, and sit down quickly, and write 50. So he cut it in half. Then said he unto another, how much owest thou? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said unto him, take thy bill and write 80. And the Lord commended the unjust, notice the description, steward, because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, or the wealth or the money of unrighteousness, that when ye fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitation. Very often quoted verse 10 of Luke 16, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. He that is an unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon or wealth or money, who will commit to your trust the true riches? If ye have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon, or you cannot serve God and wealth or money. Tonight we're going to start a new series. It's probably going to take us the next 4 weeks. So we're looking at the middle of March on stewardship. Stewardship. Everybody say stewardship. It's a biblical word that I don't know how much you've heard it really, but it is an important word for you to understand about your life. And specifically tonight, we want to look at this thought on stewardship. What a waste. What a waste. I think one of the worst things that could be said, obviously as a pastor, I go to a lot of funerals. I go to a lot of visitations. I have preached at funerals and spoke at gravesides. And I think one of the worst things that could be said about a person at the end of their time on this earth is that they wasted their life. Don't you think that'd be sad? When somebody is laying in a casket and there's no breath in their lungs and their lifeless body is there, it's sad to think that that person, that man, that woman would have wasted their life. They would have wasted opportunity, they would have wasted time, they would have wasted talent, and they would have wasted all of their treasure, and it would have been a very sad synopsis of somebody's life. Think about it as people would pass by this person as their lifeless body laid there. They would recall this person's name, and maybe this phrase would come to their mind, what a waste. What a waste. It's so easy in our day and age to waste time. We can go through all of the things, but let's just mention a few. Scrolling on social media, binge watching Netflix, playing video games for hours, and there's many more things we can waste our time on. That's just a few. And think about it, it's one thing to waste a minute. Well, I'm just going to do this for 1 minute. And it's even one thing to waste an hour. And it's even one thing to waste a whole day. No doubt we probably all have experienced wasting a minute, wasting an hour, and wasting a whole day. But what we need to understand is that over a lifetime, those minutes turn into weeks, and those hours turn into months, and those days turn into years. And it's really easy to get down to the end of life and look back and say, wow, did I just waste it? Before you know it, you'll look back and you'll wonder, did I waste my opportunities? Did I waste my life? Did I waste my time? And in my opinion, especially at a young person's age, as a teenager, it is very important. One of the key things to understand is to understand the importance of your life is to understand biblical stewardship and understand what it truly means to be a steward. So as we set the foundation for this series, I need to be very basic and very simple so you can understand what stewardship is. When you hear that word, I don't want it to come to your mind and say, well, that's just a big word I don't understand. You're going to understand it, okay? So here, you may already know it, but we're going to make it really simple. There is a difference between ownership and stewardship. So we're going to define these really simply. Ownership is you own the stuff. Everybody say the stuff. Stewardship, you're entrusted with the stuff. Everybody say the stuff. Do you understand the difference between ownership and stewardship? Ownership is I own it. Stewardship is somebody else owns it and they are entrusting it into my care. Everybody say, I understand. Good. Now, if you have any type of common sense, which we're praying about some of that for you, some people in this room, and you have any type of a moral compass, I'm not even saying you have to be a Christian, but if you have common sense and a moral compass, you will treat other people's stuff better than your own. Everybody say amen. Amen. Me and my wife was living in Alabama, and we were very young. We moved down there when I was 21. She was 22 at the time. And there was a couple in that church that was older. They had kids that was older. They weren't quite our parents' age, but they were right in that middle, that they just kind of took us in. They would have us over on Sunday nights for dinner. They just really loved on us. And he was a car salesman at a BMW dealership, so he was always driving brand new BMWs. And one year, the car that he chose to drive was a brand new BMW Z4. If you know what a BMW Z4 is, it's a sports car convertible. It's like, when you think of a BMW sports car, this is probably one of the things that come to your mind. And so he always would drive it, and I would always talk about it. And he said, I'm going to let you drive it one day and let you take Jessica out on a date, and you just keep it for the whole entire day. And this is what he said to me, and you treat it like it's yours. That's what he told me. So one Sunday, he said, hey, I drove the Z4, and it's out here in the parking lot. And he said, after church, we lived in the church parsonage, so he was literally right across the street. And he was like, after church, you take it. I'm going to give you the keys, and you take it for a day, and I'll get it back from you Monday. And this is what he said. I want you to treat it like it's yours. Well, guess what? I didn't treat it like it was mine. I treated it like it was his, because it was. Because you treat things differently. And here's what I mean by that. We went we went to Longhorn in Decatur, Alabama, right? It was like a 15-minute drive. We took the back roads. We had the top down. It was a beautiful day. We were driving it. We get to Longhorn, and we're in the parking lot. Guess where I parked that thing? Not next to anybody. I found I wasn't pulling that thing close to any other car that I could damage it. I parked it far away. Jessica's like, you really going to make us walk this far? I was like, yes, we're walking this far because I'm not pulling this into a tight parking space. You know why? Because it wasn't mine. I treated it differently because somebody had given me the keys to a BMW Z4, and when I brought it back to them, I wanted to make sure there wasn't any scratches or any damage that belonged to me because it wasn't mine. Now, did I enjoy it? Absolutely. You know, it's like one of those dream cars that you'd be so cool to have, but you know you're never going to have. But it was a cool day. It was a cool moment to possess it, or to, let me say it like this, to be a steward of it for 24 hours. Can I ask you a question tonight? How are you treating God's stuff? How are you treating God's stuff? Are you treating it like if somebody would have given you a BMW Z4 to drive for a day? So careful. Or are you just like treating it like it's kind of yours? When we talk about stewardship over the next few weeks, we're going to say these words a lot. You ready for them? Time, talent, and treasures. That's what we're going to talk about. Because when we talk about stewardship, that's what we're talking about. Who gives you time on this earth? Who gives you the breath to breathe and the life that you have? God. We're going to talk about your time. We're going to talk about your talents. All of you have different talents. Some of you are musically talented. Some of you are sports talented. Some of you are talented in school and your education. Some of you are talented in other things. Who gave you those talents? God. Then we're going to talk about your treasures. What's your treasures? It's your money. It's your blessings. It's your clothes. If you're old enough, it's your car. It's all of the things that God bless you with. They're treasures. But here's what I want you to understand about your treasures. They're not yours either. You say, well, I worked for that money. I stood outside in the rain at Chick-fil-A for that money. You can fill in the blank. I am really good at this, so that's how I made my money. Who gave you the health and the ability and the strength and the knowledge to get up and to go to work and to do all those things? God. One of the greatest coaches of all time, John Wooden, led UCLA to a crazy number of national championships. I can't remember, but it was like 7 in a row or something. He had this quote I always loved. He said, "Talent is God-given, be humble. Fame is man-given, be thankful. And conceit is self-given, be careful." And see, that's the danger of treating your life like an owner instead of a steward. Because if you treat your life like an owner, like you own your life, then it's really easy for pride to set in and for conceit to set in. But if I understand that everything is given by God and I'm just a steward, if I live 90 years on this earth, that seems like so long, but really so short, then I'm just a steward for that moment of everything God's given me. And the sooner you see yourself as a steward and not an owner, the sooner you will not have a reason to be prideful about anything in your life. Because you understand it's not yours, it's God. And so really quick from this story is very detailed. We're not going to have time to get into all of it. We're going to take 3 quick points, 3 ways not to be a wasteful steward as we see here in this story of the unjust steward. Number 1, I want you to notice the account required. There was an account required. Notice there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, "How is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayest no longer be a steward." Stewards must give an account to the masters of their stewardship. That's the thing about being a steward. A steward must give an account to their masters for their stewardship. And let me ask you this. If you had to give an account tonight for your life, for your stewardship, right now at this moment, what would be the balance on your account? What if you had to stand before Jesus tonight? Just imagine with me for a moment. Let's say that you knew in the next 30 minutes that you were going to stand before Jesus. Nobody ever knows. They don't get a countdown when they stand before Jesus. Nobody knows. Let's just pretend like we did. You knew in 30 minutes, at about 7:50, you were going to stand before Jesus. What would he say to you about your stewardship of his talents and his treasures and his time that he's given you? Honestly, ask yourself that question and give an account. If you had to give an account for every breath that you've ever breathed and every day that you've ever lived and every opportunity that you've ever been given, how would you give an account for your stewardship? This steward gave an account to the master for his stewardship. And in this story, the account of the stewardship was not good. This is known as the unjust steward because he wasted the master's goods. That's what the Bible says. And then notice the response when he looks at the steward, the master in verse 2, and called him and said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? If you stood before Jesus tonight, would he look at you and say, how is it that I hear this of thee? How is it that I heard that you were doing this? How is it that I heard that you were wasting this? How is it that I heard that you were... What would Jesus, if you had to give an account for your stewardship tonight, how would that account go with Jesus? Because here's what we have to understand about stewardship. It's good that you have different authority in your life, but you're not going to be giving that account to your mama. And you're not going to be giving that account to your daddy because they don't own it either. You're not going to be giving an account to any of the pastors on this staff. You know who you're going to be giving an account to? God, Jesus, the creator of the world and the lover of your soul. That's who. And that's the point. We could literally end the series here and I could close my Bible and we could come home. Because the point is you must live every day as if you could give an account for your life tonight. That's how it works. Good stewards always live like that. And if you are a steward of the master's goods, you got to live as if you could give an account right now. You know what's going to keep you out of trouble tomorrow? If you live as if you would have to give an account of your life to Jesus tomorrow. You know what's going to help you stay out of trouble a week from now? Is if you live as if you're going to have to give an account to Jesus a week from now. It's every day when I wake up, I'm going to have to stand before Jesus and give an account for my life. And you don't get a notice. You don't get a 30-day notice. You don't get a countdown. It could be today. It could be tomorrow. You don't know. And a successful steward, you know what they always keep in the forefront of their mind? This stuff isn't mine, and one day I'm going to have to give an account for it. We notice that there's an account required, but number 2, there's an attitude revealed. There's an attitude revealed. Notice the attitude found in verse 10. This is the whole point that Jesus told this story. He says, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much, and he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. He uses these two descriptions when he's talking about the attitude that a steward needs to have. He talks about faithfulness, and then he talks about what you don't want to have, unjust. Faithfulness and unjust, and then he says these two words, little things. Everybody say little things. It's not that big of a deal, Pastor Nathan. It's just a little thing. I wrote down some little things. Homework, making up your bed, taking out the trash, a curfew. Yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I even wrote down some spiritual little things. Reading your Bible, praying over your food, tithing your money if you make it and if you have some. Those are little things. You know what makes little things easier to do is when you realize that God has gifted you with the ability to do them. He uses these two words, faithfulness and unjust. You know what's faithfulness? It's consistency. It's consistency in the little things. It's consistency when nobody's watching. It's faithfulness when nobody's watching. And then what does unjust have to do with? Faithfulness has to do with your consistency, and the unjust has to do with your character. He said that he that is faithful in the least will be faithful in much, and he that is unjust in the least is unjust in much. God is teaching this principle. If you cut corners in the little things, you will cut corners in the big things. Every single time. If you cut corner, I know this sounds crazy, but this is how human nature works. If you even now create habits of cheating and cutting corners on your homework, there's probably some good things a good chance you're going to cut corners and cheat when it comes to relationships. Would you say relationships are big things? Absolutely. If you're going to lie on a homework assignment, there's a really good chance you're going to lie to your parents. Cutting corners in little things is going to cut corners in big things. Notice what it says in verse 11. If therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon. Let's just make this clear. We're going to get into it later on in the series. But God never says money is evil. Never. He did say it's hard for a rich man to enter into heaven. Why? Because they're tied into their money. And he said the love of money is the root of all evil. But money itself is a neutral object that God understands we have to live. And so even in this, notice what he says. If there ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust as the true riches? You know what he's saying? If you can't figure out how to be faithful in money, which is just what you have to do to live. You got to have money to go buy groceries. You got to have money to go eat. You got to have those things. If you can't figure that out, then how in the world are you going to be faithful in the things of God? That's what he's saying in this verse. So let's just boil all this down. Faithful in little things, unjust in little things. He's saying this: if you cut corners in the world, you're probably going to cut corners with God. That's what he's saying. He's pulling all of this down to this point. If you can't figure it out with unrighteous mammon, unrighteous wealth, things that don't, at the end of the day, when you stand in eternity, it's not going to matter how much money you have. If you can't figure it out with that, if you can't trust God with that, then how in the world is God ever going to trust you with anything spiritual and anything more than what you have? God will never trust you with more until he can trust you with what you already have. I found that so true in my life. God's not going to give you a bigger platform if he can't trust you with a platform that you have. God's not going to give you a better job if he can't trust you with the job that you have. There is an attitude that God is revealing in the steward, and it's that I have to be faithful in the least so God can bless me and trust me with more. And then number 3, an attitude revealed and an action requested. Notice verse 13. No servant can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate, that's pretty strong language, the one, and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Here's the action requested. You must choose. We're not going to spend much of this. I think a lot of times when people think of biblical stewardship, they think of money and they think of tithing, which is part of it. But let me just say this. If you make money, tithe is just simply this. It's 10%, right? It's 10%. So you make $100. What's 10% of $100? $10, right? God asked for 10%. But that's grace that he only asked for 10%. Because how much belongs to God? All of it. And so here's something that you need to learn at a young age. If you have a job and you get money, I would even argue to this point, especially as you get older, especially now that you're a teenager. If you get money for your birthday, you know what I think would be a good principle to put in your life? Is that you tithe off that money. You know what it does when you tithe? Even now, when me and my wife write a tithe check, we still do checks because I don't like paying the credit card fees online. And we write the check. You know what it reminds me of every single time? That at the end of the day, this is God's money. At the end of the day, it's God's money. And it does not matter how it makes me feel. It does not matter what it would do for me. Oh, wow, if I held this tithe back, what could I spend it on? It's so much bigger than that. People really think like that. Well, if I just hold this tithe money back, what could I spend it on? And you'll be tempted to do that. But what it does, it releases ownership over your money and over your life when you tithe and give back to God. And it actually gives you freedom. And I believe this. I think there's even some Bible here and there to back me up. I think when God sees someone who is faithful in their giving, he allows blessings in their life. Not necessarily that I'm ever going to drive a BMW Z4, but that your washing machine keeps going a little bit longer. I believe that. Or maybe that tire doesn't go flat. You say, you think all that goes in the... I think God takes care of people who truly trust him and that truly has a heart of stewardship with their money but then also with our life. And then he says this, the action requested, you got to choose. Who are you going to serve? You must choose who or what. And then he uses these descriptions: serve, love, and hold to. It all goes back to this question. And this is what I was trying to get to even when I was talking about tithing. Who owns it? And if you think you own it, then you're going to be consumed with your stuff. If you think you own it, you're going to be consumed with your stuff. But if God owns it, and He has chosen you to be the steward of your time, of your talents, and of your treasures, then He has given you on purpose for a purpose, then you must live every day for the day that you will stand before Him and give an account for your life. That's what being a steward is. And understanding that if I wake up tomorrow morning and my eyes open up and I'm still breathing and I'm still on this side of heaven, that when I get up, here's just a good practice about how good your stewardship is. I know it's not for everybody. It'd be a great habit to develop as a teenager. But how much of your day, why not tithe your first 30 minutes to the Lord? You know what that is? It's being a good steward of your time. There are times in my life I haven't been great at that. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but over the past few years, I've been really good at it. Getting up and giving the first part of my day unto the Lord. Do you know why? It sets up my mind and my heart for stewardship. Just think about how quick this switches. If the first 30 minutes of my day is consumed with this, how do you think my mentality would be about stewardship? Probably not on the things of the Lord, and probably consumed with my own life and everything else in the world. I'm telling you, if you don't have that habit of getting up and starting your day with the Lord, that's going to reset your stewardship every single day, because you're saying, this life is not mine. This time is not mine. This day is not mine. It is God blessed me with this, and now I'm going to use it for Him. And whether I'm serving at Chick-fil-A or walking through North Buncombe Middle School or high school, wherever I'm at, God has me there on purpose and for a purpose. And He knows the talents I have, and He knows the treasures that I have. You know what He expects me to do with them? Use it for His glory. Let's pray. Dear God, thank You for this word. Thank You for this